Hi there, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to make a pineapple vase and a crystal ring holder using AirDryClay. Before we start, please consider subscribing if you haven't already and turn on the notifications. Now let's jump right into the DIYs. To make our pineapple vase, we'll need some AirDryClay. I'll be using a 200 ml glass bottle as the core of the vase. Next, I kneaded a large chunk of clay into a ball and started rolling it out with a rolling pin. I was rolling it out as evenly as possible until it was about a 1/4 inch thick. Next, I took the rolled out clay and began wrapping it around the glass bottle. I grabbed some more clay and rolled it out to cover the remaining surface of the bottle. I removed the excess clay and smoothed the seams together with my fingers and a bit of water. To smooth out any bumps, I rolled the bottle a few times to distribute the clay evenly. Next, I rolled some more clay into a coil long enough to wrap around the entire vase. Then I flattened the coil a little bit using rolling pin. I rolled out the clay to make a 3 to 4 cm wide strip. To attach the strip to the vase, I scored around the bottom of the vase and on the strip with a knife. The small grooves created by scoring ensures a better adhesion. I applied a little water and wrapped the strip of clay around the bottom of the vase. I added the strip to the bottom of the vase to make the base thicker, giving it a pineapple-like shape. Using my thumb, I blended the edges of the strip upward to seamlessly merge it with the rest of the vase. I continued maneuvering it until the shape resembled the body of a pineapple. I took a piece of dental floss and marked diagonal parallel lines on the clay surface. I tried to keep an even spacing between each line, ensuring they circled the vase completely. Once the entire surface was covered with these diagonal lines, I then held the dental floss in the opposite direction and crossed it over the existing lines to create a diamond pattern. Then I used a pointed clay tool to deepen the grooves a little more. We want to avoid making the grooves too deep because this could cause the clay to crack along those lines as it dries. I smoothed out the grooves a bit using a damp brush. Next, it was time to add leaves to the pineapple vase. I shaped each leaf by rolling a piece of clay into a teardrop shape using my palms and then flattening it into a leaf shape with a pointed end. You can flatten it either with your palm or a rolling pin. I was doing my best to make the leaf shapes as identical as possible. To attach the leaves, I scored the bottom of the leaves and the neck of the vase. Using a small amount of water, I stuck the leaves to the neck of the bottle. I needed about 5 leaves to encircle the entire neck of the vase. Next, I shaped 5 additional small pieces of clay into another set of leaves. Then I positioned each leaf between 2 leaves from the previous layer and attached them securely. I gently bent the leaves to arrange them as desired, then I smoothed along the intersection between the leaves and the pineapple's body for a seamless finish. I allowed the vase to dry for about 48 hours. Once it was completely dry, I started to color the vase. To paint the pineapple's body, I used light yellow acrylic paint. We can go for another coat of paint if necessary. We just have to make sure the first layer of paint is completely dry before applying a second layer. Next, I made the yellow paint 3 to 4 shades darker by adding some brown to it. I dipped a detailing brush into this dark mustard yellow shade and defined the grooves on the pineapple's body to add more depth and dimension to the diamond pattern. This step really made the pineapple vase stand out and gave it a lot of character. To correct any mistakes, we can use a clean damp brush to wipe off any paint before it dries. To color the leaves of the pineapple, I used a sage green acrylic paint. Using a detailing brush, I carefully outlined along the intersection between the leaves and the body of the pineapple. Then I used the same brush to paint any hard-to-reach areas between the leaves. To seal and protect the paint, I applied a polyurethane varnish to coat the entire vase. This also gave the vase a beautiful satin finish. And with that, our clay pineapple vase is complete. Let me know in the comments what you think. To create the base of our ring holder, I took a piece of AirDryClay and rolled it out to flatten it. We want it to be at least a 1/4 inch thick. Then I used this jar to trace a circle on the clay. Using a knife, I cut the circle out. I removed the excess clay and smoothed the edges. With a bit of water, I ran my finger along the rough edges to make them smooth. To make the crystal shape, I took a small piece of clay and rolled it into a slightly tapered cylindrical shape. Next, I used a piece of glass to gently press and flatten the two opposite sides. I repeated this process for the remaining two sides, resulting in a tapered rectangular block. I flattened the wider end of the block. Then, for the narrower end, I used a palette knife to shape it into a four-sided pyramid. Holding the flat end of the palette knife at a 45-degree angle, I gently pressed it against the clay to create a slanted slope. I repeated this step for all the four sides of the block. Next, using my fingers, I further sharpened the edges. It's important to make the edges really sharp to achieve the look of a prismatic crystal. Then I took another piece of clay and repeated the same steps, shaping it into a slightly shorter crystal than the previous one. I made another crystal of the same length. I created a total of 5 crystals, 1 long, 2 medium and 2 short. This variety will add depth and dimension to the piece. Next, it was time to attach the crystals to their circular base. I began by scoring the center of the base and the bottom of the longest crystal, then adhered it to the center of the circular base. Then I took the 2 medium-sized crystals and attached them diagonally, positioning them on either side of the longest crystal. Finally, I adhered the 2 smaller crystals diagonally on the remaining sides of the longest crystal. I filled in the gaps between the crystals with small amounts of clay. We want to make sure to fill all the gaps so it looks like a crystal cluster. Using a clay modeling tool, I pushed the clay into all the nooks and crannies. Using the tiny rounded end of the clay tool, I added some texture on the clay. My goal was to replicate the textured appearance found on a natural crystal cluster's base. I smoothed everything with a damp brush and let it dry. Please make sure to dry it on a piece of parchment paper to prevent clay from cracking. Once it was fully dry, I sanded down the edges of the circular base using a sanding sponge. Next, I painted the circular base using off-white acrylic paint. To paint the crystals, I mixed red, pink, and navy blue acrylic paint to create a purple shade. I applied this color to some parts of the crystals. Then I darkened the purple by adding a touch of black and painted additional areas. I used 2 to 3 similar shades of dark purple to add dimension to the crystals. You can vary the shades of purple by adjusting the proportions of blue and red paint during mixing. To outline the edges of the cluster's base and to paint the hard-to-reach areas, I used a detailing brush. The base layer was done. For the second layer, I used a small amount of pastel pink and purple acrylic paints diluted with 10 to 12 drops of water to make them translucent. Then, using a foam brush, I gently dabbed the paint on the crystals to add highlights. I gently blended the paint with the foam brush to ensure there were no harsh streaks. I wanted to achieve soft highlights that replicate the subtle look of amethyst crystals. Using the sharp end of the foam brush, I made the highlights on the edges of the crystals more distinct. Next, I painted the edges of the circular base with a metallic gold acrylic paint. I think the gold border really went well with the crystal cluster and also complemented the white and purple paint. To seal the paint, I went for a polyurethane varnish in satin finish. First, I coated everything with a layer of varnish. To create a more magical effect, I took some white sparkle and mixed it with the varnish. You can adjust the amount of glitter according to your liking. For the final touches, I painted the entire crystal cluster with the varnished glitter mix. And there we have it, our DIY crystal ring holder. I'm so happy with how it turned out. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. So that's all for today. I really hope you liked these DIY AirDryClay projects. If you did, comment down below which one is your favorite. My personal favorite is the crystal ring holder. If you recreate any of these DIYs, I would love to see them, so you can tag me on Instagram at DustyHues. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.